cost less, retailing for just $40, while Game Boy Pocket cost $60. The last generation's handheld war was also won on battery life, so for Koto, that was a priority too, because batteries ain't cheap. Game Gear and Lynx ate through batteries so fast, paying almost $1 an hour for power. Game Boy Pocket cost only 15 cents, while WonderSwan cost 2 cents. That made the difference between $50 a month in batteries, or just $1. That's why energy efficiency was so important. By the way, you might be wondering why it's called WonderSwan. Yokoi said, "It's beautiful on
I
the
wondered
outside
that.
and powerful on the inside, like a swan gliding elegantly across a pond, with strong legs hidden beneath the surface." There's more moving parts
Interesting way to define your handheld console.
in this story, so let's zoom out a little. As Koto was toiling away in late 96 into 97,
Does look pretty
Bandai's game
good for a
sales were
start.
slowing, and their Pippin console only managed to sell
Their
50,000
Pimpin
units.
console?
It was one of the biggest flops of all time, and at this point, Bandai was actually losing money. So they announced a merger with Sega that would form the super company, Sega Bandai. That would have made them bigger than Nintendo. In fact, Sega Bandai would have been the largest toy and video game company in the entire world. The deal was practically done until Bandai's middle managers rose up and rebelled, because the company had a home-like atmosphere that they didn't want gobbled up by the big, cold Sega Corporation. The merger's cancellation was a complete surprise, and the what-ifs for video game history are staggering. Not only what it could have meant for the WonderSwan, but also for Sega's survival in the console business. But before any of those what-ifs could play out for WonderSwan, an unexpected tragedy struck.
Was
Just a few
Sonic
months after the
skateboarding
merger
any good?
collapsed, Yokoi was suddenly killed in a tragic car crash. WonderSwan wasn't finished yet, and still more than a year out from launch. Everyone thought without him, Koto was done for, but his staff kept on, with the leadership role passing to Yoshihiro Taki. He worked under Yokoi since the 1970s, and into the Game & Watch, Game Boy, and Virtual Boy eras. He was one of the loyalists who followed Yokoi when he left, but now they'd have to finish without him. In the eventual first issue of WonderSwan magazine, Taki said, "WonderSwan's final form depend for the most part on our own decisions and positions. After all, it's true that having spent all this time at his side, we've been imbued with the Yokoi philosophy. In that sense, the machine is a condensed version of his vision." A few months later, Nintendo announced Game Boy Light, a new backlit model good for playing in the dark or under direct sunlight. But almost as soon as the words were out of their mouth, Yamauchi caught wind of WonderSwan's development. His finding out early would change the course of handheld history, and ultimately lead to WonderSwan's demise. So it might surprise you to hear it was actually Bandai who told him. They brought it to him on a silver platter, asking if he'd sell WonderSwan as a Nintendo product. It seems that they lost some of their bravado after losing Yokoi. But for Nintendo, making their own hardware was a point of pride. So Yamauchi refused and sent him packing. Bandai had made a huge blunder. They gave Nintendo advance warning and got nothing in return. In the end, it cost them everything. Because now the old man saw him as a threat. He had a near monopoly on the handheld market, but feared WonderSwan could topple it. Nintendo fought off portable competitors before, but this time was different. Not only was it designed by Game Boy runaways, it was also supported by Bandai's top-tier IP. They created Digimon and Tamagotchi. They owned Gundam, and had the rights to countless other franchises, from One Piece to Dragon Ball. Game Boy Light wouldn't be enough to beat it, and with N64 losing to PlayStation, Nintendo had to maintain their portable empire. So Yamauchi called an emergency meeting with his top guys, and told them to make a Game Boy capable of color immediately.
On the
It
double.
was just a year away, so time was of the essence. One of those top guys was Satoru Okada, who served as Yokoi's second in command since the late 60s. They'd been close friends, but creative differences drove them apart. Like when Okada wanted Game Boy to be more like Famicom, but Yokoi wanted it more like Game & Watch. Okada demanded color, but Yokoi refused. "Color's flashy and appealing at first glance," he said, But once you start playing, it's irrelevant. It's the world that matters. These kinds of disagreements piled up, till eventually the department split in half, with Yokoi loyalists on one side and Okada's on the other. Some followed Yokoi when he quit Nintendo, but Okada was glad to see him go. Now he was in charge of Nintendo's handhelds, and it was his job to rush out the Game Boy Color. After 30 years as Yokoi's right hand man, he was now tasked with destroying his final invention.
Isn't it like
Later that
espionage?
WonderSwan was
Corporate?
revealed at 1998's Tokyo Game Show. Bandai's president got on stage and said, "I only attend announcements for products that are sure to be profitable. Rest assured, unlike Pippin, this is a product worthy of Bandai." The crowd laughed and applauded. Bandai projected sales of 4 million WonderSwans in its first year, which was more than Game Boy sold in its first. When Japanese press learned of Yokoi's involvement, they wrote articles saying it'd be a cruel twist of fate if WonderSwan did overthrow Game Boy, and he wasn't there to see it. And Nintendo's rush for color, the Game Boy Light got overshadowed before it even released. Ultimately, fewer than a million units were ever produced, making them hard to find even back then. It was originally supposed to come to the West in massive numbers, but Nintendo canceled those plans to put all hands on deck for Game Boy Color. Another, more interesting casualty was Project Atlantis, a 32-bit next-gen Game Boy that was essentially going to be Game Boy Advance. We'll do a full video on Atlantis soon, but long story short, it got tossed aside too. However, Nintendo was able to leverage their previous work on it to speed up Game Boy Color's development. Yamauchi also demanded unbeatable games, but his designers didn't have a lot of time or enthusiasm. We had begun working on the 32-bit Atlantis project a long time before, Okada remembers. It felt like we'd
3500 for
done all we
wine.
could with Game Boy's 8-bit processor, and that it was high time we moved on to better things. That's what Atlantis was supposed to do for us. It was going to give us that boost. The game designers were unhappy with this too, and said, "We've already completely exhausted the possibilities with Game Boy, and the only upgrade you bring us is color? What were you thinking?" Okada's team managed to launch Game Boy Color a
But
few
it came
months
in so
before
many
Bandai,
colors. That was
with
like the
hardly
coolest part.
anything to play on it. In Japan, there were only 3 launch
It's the
titles,
best part about the
2
N64
colorized
too, you know?
old games, Tetris DX and Wario Land 2, and the other was Hexite, a third-party puzzle game. Even Nintendo knew it was weak, so they sent a guy to Enix's office to request that their upcoming game, Dragon Quest Monsters, be made color compatible, even though it was a standard Game Boy game releasing a month before the new color model. In America, launch was even more pitiful. Tetris DX and Pocket Bomberman. That was it. Just 2 old games with color added. We had nothing, said Okada. One saving grace was that it could play original Game Boy carts. Nintendo's official reason for launching so soon was to celebrate Game Boy's 10-year anniversary. Truth was, though, the real anniversary was April the following year. But if Game Boy Color released then, it would have got beat to market by WonderSwan. Back then, Nintendo never would have admitted that's why they actually rushed launch, or that it was Game Boy Color's entire reason for existing. But long after retiring, Okada would admit as much to author Florent Gorge for his History of Nintendo book series. Great reads, by the way. We highly recommend them. A color version of a decade-old handheld with basically no games probably wouldn't have been enough to stop WonderSwan. What really saved Nintendo was the surprise hit Pokemon, which released in 1996 and slowly grew in popularity in the years since. Before that, Game Boy was a dying last-gen system, which gave WonderSwan a clear path to victory. But Pokemon got people buying Game Boys again, to the tune of almost 20 million a year. Third parties started making games for it again too, and Game Boy was resurrected, bigger than ever. There's some irony, since Yokoi was kind of responsible for Pokemon existing in the first place. He was originally the game's producer, and when Game Freak ran out of money mid-development, he lent them IP and his own ideas, so they could make Yoshi and Mario and Wario, which got cash in their pockets that made it possible to continue making Pokemon. Without Yokoi, it probably never would have been finished. Game Freak's founder, Satoshi Tajiri, thought of him as a father and learned a lot from him. Pokemon was reaching blockbuster status just before Yokoi died, and he was genuinely
We have to
proud
make another
of
trip
Tajiri.
back, I think.
Sadly, neither man could have anticipated
Goddamn.
Pokemon, of all things, that would drive the nail into Yokoi's last legacy. WonderSwan finally launched in March of '99. There were a dozen color options, some of which were picked by fans in an online poll, and it had a 7 game launch lineup, better than what Nintendo scrounged up, like an exclusive Mega Man, Chocobo Mystery Dungeon, and Digimon Adventure Anode Tamer. As you'll recall, Bandai invented Digimon. They started out as digital pets, the masculine counterparts to Tamagotchi. The first episode of the Digimon anime aired the same week as WonderSwan came out, making Anode Tamer an especially strong launch title. It's an RPG where you collect Digimon, build teams, and use a link cable to trade and battle with friends. A companion game called Cathode Tamer came out a year later, with version exclusive Digimon and some other minor differences. These games weren't identical to Pokemon. The combat's more complex, for example, with up to 3 monsters on a grid, but at their core, they're pretty similar. But the real star of the launch lineup was Gunpei. Gunpei Yokoi designed it before his death, and Koto named it posthumously in his honor. Japanese reviews scored it even higher than Pokemon, and a lot of retailers sold out in less than an hour. It was exactly the kind of game Yokoi believed in, ideas over graphics. Yokoi's concentration when he was bent on making a fun game was tremendous, remembers Taki. Watching, it might not look like much, but playing, it's addictive. We speak from experience. It's sort of like Tetris, but you've got to form lines across the screen. The more pieces per line, the more points. So you've got to zig and zag quick before the screen kills you. According to Nikkei newspaper, developers across Japan were supposed to be busy making games for the upcoming GameCube and PlayStation 2. But, quote, in the spring of 1999, the gaming professionals who should have been caught up in this technological whirlwind were instead spending their days playing Gunpei on a monochrome screen. WonderSwan sold for half Game Boy Color's price, and its games were cheaper too, around $20 or $30, while Nintendo's cost 30 or 40. So, despite Nintendo's best efforts, WonderSwan did enjoy a successful launch. A lot of retailers sold out, with most buyers in their 20s, making them a bit older than Nintendo's demographic. Magazines reported they bought WonderSwan on
Just
site
to
without
refill?
question.
Couple grand.
Seemingly, they were just happy to get their hands on one. As Kodo Labs popped champagne, Yamauchi was across town, thinking which card to play next. Almost immediately, he slashed the Game Boy Color's price from $75 to $60, and he dropped Game Boy Pocket to $30, making it even cheaper than WonderSwan. Nintendo PR said they just wanted to do right by their fans. They didn't lower Game Boy prices elsewhere, though. The timing and fact they only dropped prices in Japan, I think it's fair to say, reveals the real reason they did it. WonderSwan still managed to sell 1 million units in its first 3 months, which was fantastic for a Japan-only launch. That's more than the original Game Boy sold in its early months. Games kept pouring in, from Gundam and One Piece to Klonoa and Street Fighter. But sales slowed after a while, and it was clear that Nintendo was winning. Yamauchi further strengthened his position by announcing Game Boy Advance over a year and a half before it was ready. Revealing it so soon was a strategic move to distract consumers from the competition.
So that'll be about
In the meantime,
$5,000
WonderSwan still
for
had
5K
Game Boy Color to
experience.
contend with. Not only did
The
it
other
get
one
a
would
head
be about
start, but its
38.
backwards compatibility gave it a software advantage too. There weren't many new games, but Game Boy Color could still play hundreds of old ones, and add a little color to them. Meanwhile, WonderSwan's library could be measured in the dozens. Japanese magazines opined that 10 years ago, price and battery life led Game Boy to victory over its color competitors. But consumer preferences had apparently shifted, so Kodo went back to their house and cooked up a new model, the WonderSwan Color. Compared to Game Boy, it could display 4 times more colors at once. The screen was made slightly bigger, and extra RAM allowed for more complex games, while still having compatibility with all the old ones, and battery was still 4 times better than Nintendo's. WonderSwan Color released in late 2000 for $60 with another strong launch lineup. After releasing Final Fantasy VII on PlayStation, Square had a falling out with the Big N, so they threw their weight behind WonderSwan, starting with a remake of the original Final Fantasy as a launch title. We played the NES original a few months ago and were blown away when we booted up this remake. Not only the graphics and sound, the entire game's faster, smoother, and better balanced. There's been a million Final Fantasy remakes in the decades since, but this was the very first, and it was absolutely a system seller. You could also get it bundled with a special edition Final Fantasy console. The hype was huge, and a lot of fans camped overnight at game shops. Some lines stretched over 100 people long, but there wasn't enough supply to meet demand, so most of them had to go home empty handed. There were four more launch titles, including a new Digimon adventure in Gunpei EX, which added
Oh, I
color
forgot
and
the
online leaderboards.
Camelot
Now's a good
teleport.
time to talk peripherals, many of which came directly from Koto and Bandai, like the Wonder Gate that lets you hook up to a cell phone for leaderboards, download
Oh, it's not
DLC
even.
like
Oh,
new levels of
I gotta get
characters,
that
and
guy
also browse
wandering the
the internet and
forest, the
send
Elven
emails.
Forest, to
Nintendo
recharge it.
copied
Oh
it and
no,
released the nearly identical mobile adapter
no.
GB 6 months later. There was also Wonderborg, a robotic bug you controlled with WonderSwan, or you could let it go autonomous and serve as a Tamagotchi like pet,
What drops
and
teleport
link cable
crystals?
similar to Game Boys for playing head to head in Gunpei and Tetris, or trading and battling in Gundam and Digimon. You could also
I
link
need more than
WonderSwan with
one.
Digimon Virtual Pets using a dock and rock connector. Probably the most interesting peripheral was Wonder Witch, a dev kit aimed at amateurs who wanted to make their own games. Professional grade dev kits cost thousands of dollars, but Wonder Witch was only 100. Fans would make their own games, then trade them back and forth at conventions. There were a few contests where winning entries became official WonderSwan games. The best of them was Judgment Silver Sword, which was so popular that it sold out, and nowadays they sell for over $1,000. In the years that followed, Japanese writers likened the WonderSwan scene to modern day iPhones. Anyone could make their own games, just as anyone can make their own app. And if they're good, they'll proliferate far and wide. WonderSwan switching between horizontal and vertical views is also how smartphones would later function. Not that Apple stole those ideas, of course, but it's worth recognizing where WonderSwan was ahead of its time. There were lots more peripherals, but we'll just touch one more, the Wonderway, which lets you connect to PlayStation games. You also needed a pocket station. If you're not familiar, when Sony announced their first portable device, people were stoked, then disappointed when they saw it was a glorified Dreamcast memory card. It turned into a huge hit anyway, much bigger than anyone expected. So many Japanese people bought Pocket Stations in 1999 that Sony canceled plans to release it overseas. They just couldn't make enough of them. With Pocket Station, you can exchange data with PlayStation to unlock mini games. For example, you could send chocobos from Final Fantasy VIII to your Pocket Station, raise them like Tamagotchi, then send them back to the main game to unlock rare summons and stuff like that. If you had Wonderwave and Pocket Station, you could transfer data between WonderSwan and PS1, like sending Digimon from the adventure games over to Digimon World so you could see them on the big screen. With Dock and Rock, you could take Digimon digital pets, send them to WonderSwan games, then again to PlayStation. WonderSwan's also where Sony released their first ever handheld game, a fun little puzzler called Devil Dice. More publishers jumped on board too, including Sega after they dropped out of the console wars, bringing over Golden Axe and Puyo Puyo. Capcom brought more Mega Man and a Ghosts and Goblins sequel. Squaresoft was the biggest supporter and made a couple more Final Fantasies, Saga remakes, Front Mission, and more. Bandai was delivering a lot of popular series like Dragon Ball, Inuyasha, and One Piece. There's too much to list, from Guilty Gear to Super Robot Wars, and some quirky stuff from Koto Labs. It was a great library of about 200 games, RPGs, and anime as its biggest strengths. Unfortunately, publishers lent more support to Game Boy, and Nintendo was a powerhouse publisher all on their own, with Mario, Zelda, and Pokemon. WonderSwan's games were good, but Nintendo's were better. Despite having better hardware, lower price, and longer batteries, WonderSwan was losing. The fatal blow came in 2001, Game Boy Advance. Okada's team rebooted Project Atlantis and spent the last 2 years perfecting it. It was 32 bits, with more colors and higher resolution. And this time, they did have launch titles: Mario, F-Zero, Castlevania, and more. Bandai put up one last fight the following year with Swan Crystal. It's the same as WonderSwan Color, but they replaced the ghosty screen with a higher quality TFT, which looked just as good, if not better, than the screen on the Game Boy Advance.
Never even heard of
Fans
this
voted for
console.
colors again, and funnily enough, the one with the most votes looked like Game Boy Advance. The battery life still doubled Nintendo's, and at $65, it was 20% cheaper. But the war was already over. They'd lost. You could still get Swan crystals made to order into 2009, but they disappeared from stores in early 2003, which was effectively Bandai's surrender. Some more games trickled in the next few years, but the biggest hitters got canceled, including more from Square and even Bandai themselves. A lot of its best games got ported to GBA, ironically making Nintendo even stronger. WonderSwan was going to connect to PS2, but that got canceled as well. Then Sony swooped in and poached some WonderSwan devs to help make the PlayStation portable. When Nintendo found out, they canceled Project Iris to rush out DS at lightning speed and launch before PSP. History repeated itself as DS defeated its more powerful foe in the end. Maybe by now you can see why Japanese think of PSP as WonderSwan's spiritual successor. One of the biggest disappointments in the WonderSwan saga was its canceled export overseas. In 1999, Bandai announced an alliance with Mattel that would have seen them take partial ownership of each other and bring WonderSwan stateside. But the deal was later scuttled, with neither party saying why. Game Boy Advance got announced in the interim, so a lot of fans speculate Mattel saw the writing on the wall and pulled out. They probably figured if WonderSwan's RPG and anime heavy library couldn't beat Game Boy Color in Japan, it didn't stand a chance in America versus Game Boy Advance. In the end, WonderSwan did fall short of Bandai's expectations. At only 3.5 million units, sales are puny next to Game Boy. In context, though, they're better than they look. In Japan, Game Boy Color sold 11 million, which is more than 3.5, but not a massacre. It wasn't the blowout the original Game Boy gave the likes of the Game Gear. 3.5 million's pretty close to what Nintendo's home consoles were selling at the time. And in Japan, WonderSwan was the best selling handheld of all time, even to this day, so long as you don't count Nintendo and Sony's handhelds. It beat everything else, though, but it could have sold so much more. The whole story begs a lot of what ifs. What if Yokoi hadn't died in that car crash? What if Bandai didn't spill the beans to Yamauchi? What if their merger with Sega went through? If things had played out differently, could we have seen a WonderSwan 2 and 3 continuing into the present? Guess we'll never know. So let's move on to postmortem. Folks in Japan mostly attribute WonderSwan's defeat to three main reasons. First, the Yamauchi was always a step ahead. WonderSwan was designed to beat Game Boy Pocket, but ended up in a duel with Game Boy Color instead. By the time WonderSwan Color came out, Game Boy Advance was right around the corner, and Nintendo ruled handhelds before the battle even began, giving them a home court advantage. Another problem was that a lot of WonderSwan's improvements fell into diminishing returns territory. Game Boy costing 15 cents for battery was a huge improvement over Game Gear's buck an hour. WonderSwan costing 2 cents was even better. But when the cost's already so low, people don't care as much about additional savings. The same goes for price. Game Boy was a lot cheaper than its early competition. WonderSwan was even less expensive, but Game Boy was under 10,000 yen anyway. Anything below that threshold, consumers already viewed as affordable. So again, the extra savings didn't do much to sway purchasing decisions. In fact, it might have been counterproductive, as some believe WonderSwan was too cheap for its own good. A shopper would see it on the shelf next to Game Boy, notice it was cheaper, and games were cheaper too, then assume it was a piece of crap. Aside from those three reasons, everything we mentioned earlier applies as well, from Yokoi's passing to Nintendo's more robust library. We'll close by seeing where everyone ended up after the dust settled. Bandai had spent over 20 years making hardware, but after WonderSwan died, they gave up for good. It was the last system they ever made. They took it in stride, though, and went on to support Game Boy Advance, DS, and PSP. Bandai eventually merged with Namco. Nowadays, they make Pokemon spin-offs and help Sakurai with Smash Brothers. As for Sony, they tried one more time with PS Vita, but dropped out of handhelds after it only sold 14 million worldwide. Yamauchi retired in 2002 when the war was over and handed the reins to Satoru Iwata. Yamauchi passed away in 2013 and Iwata in 2015. Since then, Nintendo's given up their handheld empire to move into hybrids instead. The laboratory
Another
still
1,000.
exists to this day. Yokoi's old uniform and wristwatch are prominently displayed in their office, along with gadgets from the past from Game Boy to WonderSwan. In the 2000s, they continued as designers for hire,
I
just
do
as
want
they'd
to.
done for Bandai. Nothing that tried to compete with Nintendo, though. They made the educational pocket challenge too, the now you get for casino gambling, and the Mama Mite pregnancy aid, all of which are more or less based on WonderSwan. And they co-designed V-Flash, a 32-bit educational home console. In 2006, they remade Gunpei and released it on DS and PSP. But since then, they've mostly gotten out of games. Koto has been following their original vision, pursuing their inspirations instead of profits. Their motto is to turn adversity into fun by adding entertainment. Under that mantra, they invented Himonos and Piperoids for letting kids build their own toys from eco-friendly paper. They won awards, and the Japanese government installed them in elementary schools to encourage students' creativity and environmental impact. Part of Yokoi's original plan for Koto was to combine gaming and medicine to make physical rehabilitation fun for patients. His followers eventually did that too, with the Occlupad, a device designed to help treat an eye condition that affects vision. Before Occlupad, treatment was painful and less likely to succeed. Now, it's fun. Looking back, his successor Taki said, I'm gradually losing track of the past, and I've forgotten a lot of it. Now that Yokoi's gone, it's all just guesswork about what he wanted us to do or how things would have turned out. When he passed, people said, Koto's finished. But the rest of us continued working, despite the anxiety of not knowing if we really could. And eventually, we made all kinds of things. For WonderSwan's recent 25th anniversary, they released a bunch of memorabilia, like replicas, phone cases, and t shirts. And finally, what happened to the WonderSwan itself? A lot of Japanese folks traded theirs in for a Game Boy Advance, leaving a huge overstock that kept down prices. But there's been a resurgence lately as nostalgia seekers, history buffs, and collectors try to get their hands on one. Thankfully, even Swan Crystal prices aren't too ridiculous. Most games are Japanese, but some are available in English nowadays, and some don't require much reading at all. A lot of Western enthusiasts buy flashcards so they can play all 200 games without spending an arm and a leg. And there's a modding scene for adding modern screen technology and backlights. So if this video's enticed you, rest assured that the Swan experience is well within reach, for now at least. Yokoi's final invention and Bandai's last system, Game Boy's successor and PSP's predecessor, the missing link. The reason Game Boy Light was killed and Game Boy Color was born. There were a lot of handheld challengers in the 90s, but only one that struck fear in the hearts of Nintendo, the Wonder Swan. This marks the end of our Gunpei Yokoi trilogy. If you want to see our hour-long biography of the man, click the video on screen. And for his adventures in 3D, see our Virtual Boy documentary. If you enjoyed my
Wants me to
narration
stick
of
with
this
my
script,
current. I
you can
couldn't tell if
subscribe
someone was
to my
attacking me.
retrospectives about Famicom games. Give my channel a look if that's up your alley. Special thanks to Freezer and Doom for footage capture, Floron Gorge for consulting on this video and writing his amazing books, Japanese biographer Takefumi Makino, and our translator, Jacob. And of course,
You can't
thank
remember
you
what those are.
for watching.
Hanging on to items you no
Yeah, that's
longer
what I thought.
need. Carrot makes it easy to resell, regift, and recreate brand new
Herbs,
memories.
hooray!
What will you discover? Carrot, where secondhand starts local.
Oh my god, I'm going the wrong way. That's why. That's why it's not making sense.
Firefox Fast and Private Browser. Try it now.
I think I'm gonna go you first. Or did I not pick those other ones? Mhm. So you can appear there. You just gotta go through here. Okay, we can do that. It's not bad. Where are you going? Right on. So that's 3. We'll do story, right? And now I can get W roots for the hard task. 51,000 left. It was again close. Oh, nice. Almost there, 41. That's all I got for farming right now, though. Think. What did I plant? Some teaks. I don't think so. I don't think so. Oh, really? So there is a fort with no deposit. Interesting. Pest control. Yeah, pest control is void night. And now you can put both cannons on one side. Doesn't really help me because I think I got a mithril and Buddy Boy can't use that. Right. Because I was trying to get some copper or nickel or something. Easy enough. And what are my contracts? We just give them up and find new ones. Oh no, this is the wrong one. No. Yo, now I gotta wait half an hour for a void teleport. Or 20 minutes. Oh shit. Oh man, I should have got on. Well, put them on for now. I need 3. 4. I don't think this boat's set up to face those sharks, though. Oh, nice. Not winning anything this year. Nice. It's pretty decent. It looks like they paid me a bit for that, too. I think I'm gonna wait that time. Might as well clear my cannons out. Oh, I did have. Jeez. Look at that. Full Still can't believe I didn't get on that other boat. It's been that long since I sailed.
You're having people answering it one at a time. Because, like, let's say one person says something, then the next person, if they're trying to avoid accountability, will say the same thing that they did. Obviously. How do people not know this?
Again.
He not worth actually to talk about what he might know.
Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting when we hopefully get that video out later today or tomorrow, as quick as we can get it out. I think it'll be interesting what Hillary Clinton said about Howard Lutnick
And how she said it.
and how she said it. We looked at it. I think
Oh, wow.
Ms. Mays,
Oh, I should put that
with
book
the line
back.
of
I'm not
questioning.
sure how
So
that
there was
works.
a pretty thorough line of questioning yesterday between Ms. Mays and Ms. Clinton with respect to Lutnick. And I think you all find it very interesting what she had to say. But we're going to continue.
Yeah, that's what oh, wow. That's crazy. Yeah, I'm ready to hear that. Didn't this all start in 2006? Why did this take 20 years? Because the real reason why, I think, is because all the people in power then were at a closer pinnacle of their power. So they were able to shut down conversations about this. And I actually think that theoretically, like, if we didn't have the internet, you probably
Well, the
wouldn't have the
defenders
Epstein
aren't going to be able
files.
to be used.
Actually, that's not true. You wouldn't have the Epstein files. It wouldn't happen. Like, the only reason why we're able to talk about this stuff is because of the internet and because of basically, Twitter, right? Like, even if Elon didn't own Twitter and change, I think, the internet free speech, I think that we still might not even have them.
Ask questions of everyone that shows up in photos on the island and things like that. Yeah.
I will be asking for him, yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Obviously, we heard
No,
from
I
Secretary
do,
Clinton after.
And you got to keep in mind that, like, this is one of the big issues that Trump has, is that having people that were closely associated with Jeffrey Epstein on your cabinet, like Howard Lutnick, this is just a massive thorn in your side. It is. It's a huge
changing my
weakness,
mind.
and it's one of the positions where you can be attacked from this position, and it's really kind of understandable. It's a bad idea. Yeah, it looks bad, and on top of looking bad, it is bad. It's bad. Like, it's, besides, like, oh, well, this is what people think. Who cares what people think? Is it good or bad to have somebody that was that connected to Jeffrey Epstein that's on your cabinet? No, it's bad.
The position, she described the session as repetitive. She said it veered off topic. She was asked about things like UFOs, Pizzagate. Can you explain why those topics were brought up? And also in light of the release of that photo.
And she also said there were substantive questions yesterday too. But one reason there were repetitive questions about Epstein,
probably because she was being evasive. Let me guess.
Because we went through every email and every correspondence that implied Hillary Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein communicated often. You all have seen the email where he said that she looks better in person and all of that. Those were questions we asked. So every item of evidence that would suggest Hillary Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein had a close relationship, we went and asked about that. So it may have seemed repetitive because there was a lot of documentation that would suggest that she had a relationship with Epstein. So go ahead.
Clinton actually asked about the
Also got
NDAA.
salvaged.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
To be clear, Secretary Clinton actually asked us about what happened with the disclosure language in the NDAA. So, I mean, I know she's trying to pivot from the fact that she's here. She had a very close relationship regarding the Clinton Foundation and Epstein and Maxwell. But the point is, and I think I'd like to hit on this with probably Miss Mace here. But I think we have a very important interest and curiosity about what specifically the co-conspirators had a role in all this, right?
Exactly.
We know for a fact that some of these were.
See, everybody knows Jeffrey Epstein's bad, but, like, who else was involved and knew about it? That's the question.
Today, at least with my line of questioning, I'm curious about that. Why is it that these women were given plea deals as adults for trafficking minors? How much of that did they witness, etc.? And so, I don't know that Secretary Clinton was all that honest about the context of this investigation. We asked extensively about intelligence ties, whether or not she felt that she was targeted as a result of possibly an intelligence gathering operation, and she was very curiously interested in that. And then also, you'll hear it in the response, but had told us to follow up with a few countries, one of which is our ally. So that's interesting.
I wonder which one. Wow. Which one would it be?
I think Miss Luna brought up a good point about the Clinton Foundation. There's so many examples in the evidence the Department of Justice released in correspondence where Epstein bragged about how involved he was.
I've only got that many. I need to get more.
The Clinton Global Initiative and the Clinton Foundation. We asked those questions to Secretary Clinton yesterday, and she kept saying, well, she was in the Senate at that time. She wasn't focused on it. You'll have to ask my husband. So a lot of the Clinton Initiative questions yesterday went unanswered because Ms. Clinton deferred to her husband. So we'll do one more question. Annie, go ahead.
Yesterday about photos of her husband's in the Epstein files. What was her reaction when you showed various photos, for example?
There's a lot of photos with Bill Clinton. There's a lot. I feel like he's pretty much the main guy. I feel like there's more photos with him and Bill Clinton than anybody
where's
else.
McCann?
It's a lot.
I'm going to let Miss Mace answer that. Quick. We're on TV.
Okay, I'm not going to say anything. No, she didn't want to answer any questions.
Oh my
about
god.
That and
I bet she did.
most of those
Yeah, I thought I had a
those
cannon on
questions
here.
for her husband, and he will be thoroughly asked about that today.
Don't I have a better haul?
You know,
Don't I have a better everything?
What he's seen, because there were other people who've come forward publicly, like Kevin Spacey, who thought all of this was very strange and actually a very high risk for a president of the United States or former president. It's all very bizarre, but I asked her very pointed questions, and you'll see that in the transcript in the video that comes out, and you'll see how she responded as well.
I swear I had a cannon on here.
If you get to watch her crashing out in the deposition and they release that in full, oh my god.
Close with this. We're going to.
I don't even know if I believe that. I want to see it.
Get a video out.
I can't wait. Yeah.
We can get it uploaded.
Yeah, let's see this.
Yesterday. So
I'm ready.
This is, for all practical purposes, a public deposition. The American people are going to see it. I heard C-SPAN's going to air it wire to wire.
This is the part that we saw.
Everyone's going to see what was
slow play.
I think that'll answer a lot of questions, especially with lightning and other things like that. Throughout the day, we'll try to send different members out to
like if Howard Lutnick had any sort of self-respect, he'd probably just step down. Like, especially if this deposition makes him look bad. Like, if he really wants to be a G, he would step down. Because, like, having you be involved in something like that, it just makes everybody else look bad. It's like a massive liability to have a person that is inside of a case like that on the policy commission and, like, on the policy team.
Give brief updates. We don't want to.
How would you not believe that? I don't know. I mean, I can see why they would not do it, because if him stepping down would imply that he was guilty, and then that would bring in Trump's. It would question Trump's judgment and putting him in that position. I know the reasoning for why they would do it, but at the same time, I feel like he probably should do it, depending on what gets released about him.
Disclose what's going on in the deposition specifically until after at the conclusion, but we'll keep you updated, and we appreciate everyone being here and look forward to updating you throughout the day.
Ms. Mace, what do you mean that Hillary Clinton was screaming?
She was unhinged, and I hope that President Clinton is less.
You can see this girl's agreeing with her. Watch, listen.
Updating you throughout the day.
See, look, watch her not. Hillary Clinton was screaming.
She was unhinged, and I hope that President Clinton is less unhinged today than his wife was yesterday. You'll see it. How do you think she had a relationship with Mr. Well, he was basically instrumental, per his words, and I think what you'll find out from Clinton today in setting up the Clinton Global Initiative.
Saying we need transparency, accountability, and we need change.
Get that video out, bro. I'm ready to watch that video.
How
I'm ready to see it.
Laws to prevent human trafficking, and
we watch it. Yeah, I watch a lot of it.
That evil level infiltrate.
I don't.
The highest levels of government.
Yeah, everywhere in the whole fucking country. And so, yeah, no, I agree with this. I'm happy. And let me go back and see if I can pull up any more of these, if there's anything else. Oh, there's one more of this.
First, in lines of questioning, that Jeffrey Epstein was running a intelligence gathering operation. In my professional opinion, I do believe it was a honeypot operation.
So, hold on. Whoa.
Running a intelligence gathering operation. In my professional.
For who is he running it for? I was just curious.
Opinion. I do believe it was a honeypot operation. And I do believe that there is a list of individuals who did engage in trafficking, were given these plea deals, and I'm going to name those individuals right now. The first one would be
Oh, shit. All right.
Leslie Groth. The second one, Sarah Kellen. The third one, Nadia Markova. And the fourth one, Adriana Ross. All of these women engaged in the trafficking of minors as adults. They were working and complicit with Jeffrey Epstein's operation. And in my opinion, they are not to be given victim status because they did partake in harming young girls. I remember seeing in some of the files, some of these girls were, as young as 10, 11 years old.
Oh my God.
So obviously we have a lot of work to do, but I did want to kind of give an update and let you know in lines of questioning that Jeffrey Epstein.
Holy shit, man. So there were other people that were trapped. Dude, how is this shit so common? if you work in any sort of a like a company, I bet you've probably, how many of you guys have had at least knowledge of something like this happening in a space that you are familiar with? Whether it's like inside of a school, inside of a another organization, inside of a work or something like that. Yes, yeah, it's quite common. Just last week, dude, exactly. Like, and you see, a lot of people are saying no, but a lot of people are saying yes. And I think that some of you guys might not realize that, yes, obviously Jeffrey Epstein is like the extreme of this reality, but he's not the norm. The norm of this reality is that this happens to 3 different girls over 4 years or 14 years or something, and then that's it. So my church, actually, yeah, that's another organization. Of course, people like that get involved with churches, definitely. So yeah, I've never personally heard of a grown woman around me trafficking minors. Yeah, maybe, I don't know. Yeah, and it happens everywhere because somewhere along the way, confidence gets replaced with complacency. Well, I think really it's obvious that Epstein ran the operation for himself. He was never one to obey authority, and he always wanted to do what he wanted. Well, I don't know really if that's entirely true, right? I mean, possibly, but oh, is this her talking about it? Oh, here we go. I didn't see this at all. She's actually talking about herself.
Just finished testifying. I answered every one of their questions as fully as I could, based on what I knew, and what I knew is what I said in my statement.
That's great.
I never met Jeffrey Epstein, never had any.
You never met him.
Communication with.
The only argument that I have that, like, I think makes partial sense that she never met Jeffrey Epstein is that Bill tried to keep his friendship with Epstein, like, private, so she didn't catch on to the fact that he was hooking up with chicks behind her back. Because, like, think about it, right? Like, if you're cheating on your wife, and you've got your boy that, like, hooks you up with chicks that you cheat on your wife with, do you want him to meet your wife? Fuck no, you don't.
Where'd all my cannons go?
That's like the last thing.
Did I not put them in here? Oh my god.
I'm not even saying that's true. But like,
Ah, for fuck's sakes. I'm all over the place.
Him, I knew Maxwell casually as an acquaintance.
I'm just gonna go right there.
They asked me, I did my very best to respond.
Fuck.
If we were like 27 times the island,
refused to hold public hearing, so I wouldn't have to be out here characterizing it for you.
Well, you're going to see they're going to see the video, right? I mean, like, what are you talking about? Like, you're getting the video released. Why are you crying?
Yourself, I didn't have to offer exactly the same option.
Yeah.
Secretary Clinton did provide me with a statement stating she had no information to provide.
Let me see if there's any more of this. A little effort coffee will show up most of the president in the Epstein files. Well, I don't know. I think your husband's there too. Like, what are you talking about? So yeah, no, I feel like obviously that's what's happening. And where is it here? If I can find a few more of these and look at it.
Well, as my friend Joanne Carducci said, there's 3 people mentioned most in the Epstein files, and that's Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and Donald Trump. One of them is in prison, one of them died in prison, and one of them is the president of the United States. But we're deposing Hillary Clinton. Like, it doesn't make any sense. At the end of the day,
wouldn't it make sense to depose Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump? Like, I mean, logically, that's what you would do, right? It's like, if she's the wife of a guy that's also in the Epstein files a lot, like, wouldn't it just make sense to depose both of them? I mean, like, logically, that's the solution.
the government has repeatedly lied about these files. They refuse to release the full files. Then they're hiding the documents, and now they're pointing allegations everywhere except at the president, who is in the files the very moment.
What are we talking about? The president's been Trump's been implicated in this 50 fucking times. People have been blaming this on Trump and saying that he's the one hiding them for years. What are we even talking about? What does she mean?
It's a huge distraction to use Hillary Clinton, the like vicious
Hillary
Clinton, as a distraction.
Yeah, I feel like it's obvious that's what's happening.
Or as a distraction from not going after Trump for 4 years.
Let me play. Well,
yeah, they didn't go after him for 4 fucking years. Why is that? Probably because it's not that simple. And yeah, I don't like seeing him deposed. They certainly went after me. Yeah, exactly. I hate listening to it with the fucking radio here. And what is this? If I can find it. Here's another one.
Ladies and gentlemen, keep in mind that bombs were in existence and free to have been opened during the Biden administration.
Did doesn't care what administration. She's like,
He's right. You went out for 4 years. Yeah. How come you didn't know what the Democratic Party did? What am I missing? I'm not saying I know. It's a legitimate question. That's it. Maybe my extraordinary producers should be able to help me do the commercial break. But from my understanding,
we need a prayer potion for boat to protect boat.
for being open there, they were still under investigation. I'm gonna pull you up. This is not a good argument. I'm gonna explain why it's not a good argument. If Trump did a secondary investigation into Jeffrey Epstein as a response to people wanting the files open, would you accuse him of trying to cover up the files by doing an investigation to make it to where the files weren't privileged to be released? Would you accuse him of doing that?
What do I want to do? What do I want to do?
Just gotta think about it from that perspective. Doing an investigation? Well, let's assume they were, right? I mean, let's talk about this, like, because again, let's think for ourselves here for a minute, right? Rather than just talking. Let's see what this is. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. It's not really. Why is this really a complicated thing? I'm all for being released, but I believe they need the Senate support, which they wouldn't provide. So let's see. Well, like, you didn't answer the question. If Trump did a secondary and opened a secondary investigation into the files, Biden never even talked about releasing the files. Number one. Number two, you said that they didn't get released because of an investigation. Now you're talking about it being the Senate. So which one is it? So let's go back to the original question. If Trump, as a response to people wanting the Epstein files getting released, started an investigation, another investigation into the Jeffrey Epstein files, which would have shut down a release of the files, would you consider that him covering it up? We're going to go both. No, we're not going to do that. We're not going to. Those files were sealed to Ghislaine Maxwell's trial. When did her trial end? What year did her trial end? Because she's been in jail for a while. Answer damn question exactly. You could figure out and release the files based off of them not being involved with Ghislaine Maxwell. It's not like every single file was related to her. And also, you're not answering the question again. I think the reason you're not answering the question is because everybody knows the answer. If Trump had started another investigation like Biden had into the files, everybody would have accused Trump of saying that this investigation is only being done in order to stop the release of the files. December 29th, 2021. Maxwell was sentenced 2022. Yeah, exactly, right? So it's like you got two for this. So, like, why did you not do that? Well, it's because you didn't want to. So, really, I think that Trump had started, and they even accused him of this, that Trump was going to start.
Okay, let's upgrade the boat.
For being released. This was a concern that people had like 2 months ago that it was going to happen. So, how is it that the accusation of Trump using the investigation in bad faith is also being used as a justification for Biden doing the investigation, and we're presuming good faith? This is totally ridiculous. It's a double standard.
Oh, adamant nails? Ooh, I don't know if I got those.
Trump campaign to release them because he's in them? Why would Trump campaign? That doesn't even make sense. How would Trump not know what's in the Epstein files? He was the president when Epstein died. He was the president when Epstein died for over a year. You've got to remember, Epstein was killed or died on President Trump's watch. He died in 2019. President Trump was president in 2019. Think about it. Jesus. None of this makes sense, guys. You got to think about it. Here it is. With every email about it. That could have been when Biden was in office. He could have. Yeah. Well, why didn't you do it? Because they didn't care. They didn't care because they knew that nothing in there. The Epstein files were either so problematic that it would implicate too many people on their side as well, or there wasn't enough information in them in order for it to be a like clean kill, basically. And so that's probably the reason why it didn't get released. It's so important. You gave him 34 felonies, and you're not going to release the Epstein files? Like, which one's more important? Paying off a hooker through your business or raping kids on an island? Ah, geez, guys, I really wonder. So whenever you're charging somebody 34 times for paying off a hooker, and you're not even opening up the files for a fucking a rape island, then yeah, I think that there's probably nothing going on that you know of. It just doesn't make sense. What were the Democrats doing at that particular moment in time? Talking about trans kids. This is the kind of stuff that smells. It does. You're right. It's obvious something's wrong. You don't need to be a genius to see that. Because my attitude is just deducing how much they despise Trump. And if there was some real bona fide so since you went out 34 felony convictions, which essentially would deduce that paying us money to storm a porn star. Just yep. She would have revealed it's the same thing I said. Literally exact same thing. That happened leading up to the election in 2016. Yeah. Okay? If you had something like that you were willing to parade him through the streets with, of course, yep. If you had something on him about Epstein, you'd have let him know earlier. To make sure he didn't become the 47th president. Yep. That's just my thinking from a logical perspective. But what do I know? It's the same thing I know. See, watching the strips, I don't know if he does or not. But like that's the same, bro. Like that's almost word for word the way I talk about the shit. Absolutely, for fucking sure, definitely, 100%. We should be arresting anyone who's resistant to the release the Epstein files should be held as accomplice. Well, I don't know about that. Depends on who it is. They still haven't been investigated yet, though. And why do you think that is?
Is the First Lady a compulsive liar, though? It's beginning to look that way. In an interview on last night's 2020, intended to promote her new book, It Takes a Village.
Oh, no.
Mrs. Clinton folded under tough questioning by Barbara Walters and admitted that, in fact, it does not.
Oh, I do have escape. I should have
and
used.
Furthermore, that she was aware that it does not take a village when she wrote the damn book. Meanwhile, President Clinton is hard at work on Tuesday's State of the Union address, which will focus on crime, education, and the economy. At the request of the First Lady, part of the President's speech will be huge lies.
So people were joking about this bitch lying 30 years ago?
More questions about Hillary Rodham Clinton's truthfulness in an interview this week. First Lady claimed that she won the women's 100-meter dash at the 1956 Olympics.
What?
And that she had an IQ of, quote, over 700. When it was pointed out to her that these were not especially good lies, Mrs. Clinton responded, I know, I have a problem. And I invented the formula for 7-Up. In White House, federal regulators quizzed Hillary Clinton at the White House this week and gave her a perfect score on the lying section. Dirty liar. Hillary Rodham Clinton has told people that she was named for the first man to climb Mount Everest, Sir Edmund Hillary. But Esquire magazine recently pointed out Sir Edmund did not climb Mount Everest until 1953, 6 years after Hillary was born. Oh, the First Lady does have a good explanation for this discrepancy. She loves to lie.
All right. Watching Moses? Yeah, I guess so. You gotta remember this guy, dude, Norm Macdonald. Let me see if I can pull this up. This is insane. Let me see if I can look. Norm Macdonald, let me see if I pulled it. This was oh my god.
Election from the winner, you know, but what's up, man?
Okay, Norm, you're Canadian.
Yes, I am.
So what do you think of this whole presidential mess?
Well, I hope that the Democrats don't steal the election from the winner, you know, but who knows?
You like George Bush?
It's crazy that happened. This is a long time ago.
I love George Bush, man. He's a good man, decent, you know.
This is before 9/11.
He's not a liar, or crook, murderer, or anything like that. So it'd be good to get the. Yeah, I think we should get the homicide out of the White House and get like
Here it comes. Get ready.
a fresh start because we don't want any more murderers.
I think we should just go on to the next question.
Oh, Clinton, he murdered a guy.
You know.
That's a little too far. Let's just go on to the next question.
Dude,
Week. What can I tell you?
nobody talks about this. This is what's so crazy. It's like this is never talked about.
It's not mine either. I'm being very nice. Boy.
I don't want to hear it, and this is not the place to make those accusations. And you're supposed to be funny.
Test has by far. That was the next.
I thought it was a matter of record.
Let me do this.
You don't shut up.
I thought I could do this without.
Copyright manslaughter.
Oh, stop.
Did you ever hear the word? That somebody called me.
Oh, no.
That's his phone.
Oh. Hello? Oh, yeah. I know. The thing is this. You know Matt Strauss? He told me it would be funny. He said, like, why don't you carry a cell phone on and then let it ring and then pretend like there's a guy on it? No, it's a pretend.
One of your idols. Who is that?
Oh, the great Bill Cosby.
Yeah, what'd you do?
Oh my God, I love that guy. He's my hero, you know, just like you, maybe George or Bill Clinton would be your hero. I love. I just like Bill Clinton.
This man leaks into our show.
Sorry, his career is over after this.
No, Bill Clinton, who's a great man, obviously, but you know, everybody has their opinion.
Dude, he's not stopping. He doesn't stop.
Now, Bill Cosby is a great man, first of all. There's never been any accusations toward Bill Cosby about.
Oh my God. Holy shit.
What you did about Bill Cosby?
Oh, no, I met him. I opened for him at the club. He was a great man, you know. He's my hero of all time. You know how funny Bill Cosby is.
Yeah, so I'll get to the point.
And if I say that about them on the show, I'm sexist.
Not everything has a point.
You want to finish the story, or shall I ask you the next thing?
Well, the Bill Cosby thing is this.
Dear God.
I Bill Cosby. We're all fans of Bill Cosby, right? Barbara?
Yeah. You know what? Tonight, Norm McDonald and I are on The Millionaire. But tell him about that. How you thought he's done today. When is it?
It's absolutely fucking insane, bro. He goes in, imagine not being invited back on The View. What a horrible punishment. Look at this here, and it's just. So he's there. Zero interest in feels discomfort, agitation, or something else. Exactly, bro. I remember watching this, and the thing with Bill Clinton, and I remember like thinking about like all the new Epstein stuff and everything. Finish it. I think it's over.
People always told me Hollywood was like incredibly liberal and biased, and I thought it was untrue. Yes, I do.
You got 10 seconds about that.
This is time to talk about a show, man. That's all there is to it. And Norm was a legend. He was. This guy was so good. He was the best guy at being funny. Whenever it's like it looks like he's not trying to be funny, he was the best guy at seeming that he was unintentionally funny. What a fucking legend! And it's just sad when we found out about Bill Cosby. I bet the way he's talking about it, like, listen, I bet the way he's talking about it, he probably had an idea. Just like the tone of his voice. Oh, he's never been accused of anything. And then right after Bill Clinton, I mean, like, dude, I think he knew. And this was in, again, 2000, okay? So I don't know, guys. I think that's the really funny thing about somebody like this is that it's hard to really be sure whether they're being honest about it or not. But yeah, I you guys that because I thought it was really funny.
Oh yeah, that's funny.
Look at. Bro, the level just started. We're already getting overrun. I can get these guys out this crossbow tower as fast as possible. I don't even think I have a choice. Quickly. Ooh, that was close, but that should take care of things. Wait, never mind. More guys. I should have saw that coming. Anyway, we can't handle this without a second crossbow tower. Maybe a wall to block the enemy's path, too. That should hold us. Wait, now we have these big beefers coming? When does it end? This is King Shot, a tower defense and base building strategy game that just came out recently and is already top 5 in strategy games with over 1 million downloads. King Shot combines strategy, exploration, resource management, PvP, and PvE battles, plus a whole lot more. I suggest you give it a try. If you think you have a shot at becoming a king, that is.
Oh. Oh, that high elk is probably why I kept them. That's terrible. useless. I don't even want to bother with that junk.
SodaStream can replace over 1,000 single-use plastic bottles and save you up to 30% versus cans and bottles. It's simply ecological.
Lady Killjoy was once the most feared player in Runescape. Her combat level was the highest in the game, and in the wilderness, that made her untouchable. She looted gear and party hats now worth billions. Then, without warning, she vanished, taking her massive fortune with her. But her legacy went far beyond PKing. She created one of Runescape's most iconic quests, and its rewards are still used by players to this day. Without her, Runescape would be a very different game. So, who was she? Why was she so feared? And why did she disappear forever? This is the incredible story of Lady Killjoy. To tell this story right, we need to go back to 2001. We don't know the exact date, but sometime that year, Lady Killjoy discovered RuneScape. She wasn't one of the first 2,000 players, but she was close. RuneScape had only launched in January, so she was still there early enough to make history. At the time, player versus player combat wasn't just popular, it defined RuneScape. When you signed up for a RuneScape account, you had the option of being a player killer or a non-player killer. Player killers had PvP enabled everywhere outside of Lumbridge, while non-player killers were safe, but missed out on the best part of the game. There were no bosses, no mini games, no Grandmaster quests. The map was tiny, the content was basic, and PvP was the main attraction. Most players poured hours into training their combat stats, not just to destroy others, but to protect their progress. Banks could only hold coins, so dying meant losing everything you carried, except your three most valuable items. And sure, you probably didn't have much, but even your worst items felt priceless when they were all you had. In early RuneScape, death was brutal, and combat was everything. So, when Lady Killjoy joined the game, like many others, she poured her focus into her combat stats. More specifically, strength. Her first few months of playing, she ignored pretty much every other combat skill besides it. Her accuracy was terrible since her attack level was so low, but if she hit you, it was like being mugged by a sledgehammer. And while her low defense made her easier to hit, it didn't matter much if her opponents were already dead. As her strength level rose, so did her rank on the high scores. Her overall rank wasn't anything special, but in the top 2,000 fighters section, she was rising fast. Ranks in this section were determined by a player's hit points level, and because you gain hit points XP when you train other combat skills, such as strength, her hit points level climbed alongside it, pushing her up the ranks quickly. As her fighting rank rose, some of the game's top players started to notice. She was soon invited to join the Wanderers, one of the most powerful clans in RuneScape at the time. They had legends like Lightning, TKS, and even Blue Rose 13X. If you haven't seen my documentary on Blue, she was one of the only people in the entire game who could smith rune weapons and armor, the best gear available in 2001. Now, Lady Killjoy had everything, the stats and the gear. If your clan didn't have an alliance with the Wanderers and you saw Lady Killjoy coming, your heart would be racing faster than your first time fighting Jad. Although Jad wouldn't come out for another 4 or so years, I think you get what I'm trying to say. Nobody knew it yet, but Lady Killjoy's story was only just beginning, and it was about to collide with one of RuneScape's most important players. But first, did you know that every single hour a man is diagnosed with testicular cancer? It's the most common cancer among men ages 15 to 35. April is National Testicular Cancer Awareness Month, and to support men's health, Manscaped has partnered with the Testicular Cancer Society, a registered nonprofit. Manscaped is donating $50,000 to the cause and have released a limited edition collaboration, the TCS Ball Hero Bundle. This bundle includes the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra TCS Special Edition and the TCS Boxers 2.0. The lawnmower has an exclusive purple design to honor testicular cancer awareness, and it's packed with features. It's both cordless and waterproof, has dual skin-safe blade heads, a built-in LED light, and up to 60 minutes of runtime. Once you're done grooming, you're ready to equip the TCS Boxers 2.0. They're stylish, anti-chafing, and have a dual pouch design to keep the boys in place while keeping things cool and comfortable. Plus, there's a reminder inside to check yourself regularly. So grab the bundle before they're gone. Get 20% off your entire order and free shipping when you use promo code Colanello at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with code Colanello at manscaped.com. Around this time, Lady
Blink
Killjoy
scroll.
would meet Rab. Rab was RuneScape's one and only volunteer moderator. He was the first player to ever log into RuneScape, had a direct line to the game's founders, the Gower brothers, and generally had a big influence on the game. You've probably never heard his
We
name,
heard of that.
but have you ever completed the Romeo and Juliet quest, the Prince Ali rescue quest, or everyone's favorite shortcut to level 10 mining, Dorix quest? Rab wrote and programmed all of those. I'll probably make an entire video about his many contributions to the game one day, so subscribe if you don't want to miss that. But for now, just know that Lady and Rab would become close friends soon after meeting. Lady would express to Rab that she had interest in writing her own quest. He encouraged her, and after she drafted up an idea, the two went back and forth refining it. Eventually, it was passed along to the Gower brothers for their consideration. Andrew Gower would read it over, and he liked it, so he sent it off to Paul Gower to implement into the game. Now, you might be wondering why. Why would the Gowers let a seemingly random player write a quest when they could just make one themselves? Well, the answer is pretty simple. Time. Then, the Gowers were the only ones running Jagex, and RuneScape already had thousands of active players. Letting someone else take on the heavy lifting of quest writing saved them valuable times that they desperately needed. Lady's Quest would go on to become the family crest, and the final version is much different from the idea Lady originally sent to Rab. Let's start with the version that made it into the game first. I imagine many of you either haven't done this quest, haven't done it in many years, or, like me, spacebarred through most of it. So, the story goes like this. The Fitzharmon family crest has gone missing, which has ruined the family's honor. You need to find it and return it to a character named Dominthius. Dominthius is the father of the Fitzharmon family. He has 3 sons who went off to war many years ago and took the crest with them. The sons have since split the crest into 3 and stopped talking to each other. The first son, Caleb, is a chef in Catherby, who will give you his piece if and only if you complete a great task for him. Gather the fish he needs to complete his salad. The next son is named Avon in Alcarid, who wants a ruby ring and necklace made from perfect gold. You then go through a dungeon maze, mine the perfect gold, make the jewelry, and then you get his piece of the crest. Last is Jonathan, who is a wizard. He's been poisoned by spiders, but don't worry, he's bravely walking around his room in the Jolly Boar Inn doing absolutely nothing about it. If you cure his poison, he'll tell you that the final crest piece is being held by a demon named Chronozon in the low-level wilderness section of Edgeville Dungeon. He can only be killed if you use all 4 elemental blast spells on him at least once. Once you kill him, he'll drop the final crest fragment. Now, on day 1, Chronozon was actually located in the lava maze in deep wilderness, but Jagex moved him after a large number of complaints. I wouldn't be shocked if high-level players were camping this spot looking for some easy targets. Anyway, now you have all of the crest pieces, you combine them, return to Dominthius, and quest complete. In return, Dominthius will reward you with a pair of steel gauntlets, but the real reward comes from his sons. Each one can enchant the gauntlets to give them a different bonus. Caleb, the chef, offers the gauntlets of cooking, which reduce the chance of burning certain types of fish. Avon gives you the gauntlets of goldsmithing, which boost the smithing experience you gain from smelting gold bars. And Jonathan, the wizard, can enchant them into the gauntlets of chaos, which increase the damage of elemental bolt spells. But there is a catch. When this quest was released, you could only pick 1 pair, and then you were stuck with that pair forever. If you picked the gauntlets of goldsmithing, that was it. You could never get the other 2 pairs. So now let's talk about Lady Killjoy's original version of this quest. You'll soon realize how different RuneScape could have been if this was the version that made it into the game. The quest starts off pretty similarly, except this time there's 4 brothers. You help Caleb the chef, it's pretty much the same. You help Avon, it's pretty much the same, except his name is Adam this time for some reason. And then when it's time to help Jonathan, things get a little weird. Instead of being in the Jolly Boar Inn, Jonathan is in a dungeon. He's looking for a death rune so he can kill a demon that is holding a water orb. He needs this orb to complete his staff. If you kill the demon for him, who is located in the low-level wilderness section of Edgeville's dungeon, and give him the orb, he'll give you his piece of the crest. Now, as you probably guessed, that demon would later become Chronozon, but when Lady was first writing the quest, she didn't have a name for him yet. While discussing it with Rab, she first suggested Kraken, which kind of works, except, that's a fish. Then she pitched Damien, probably inspired by the Omen, which honestly is pretty cool. And after that came Cerberus and Hydra, before Rab finally suggested the name Chronozon. I found it kind of funny that 3 of the names Lady suggested would eventually go on to become real bosses in old school RuneScape, just not demon bosses. So back to the quest. You kill the demon, return to Jonathan, and oops, he's been possessed by a spider. So you need to find him a poison antidote. Once you do, and he's recovering, he'll tell you about the 4th brother, Michael. Michael was the fiercest warrior in the wilderness, and he was last seen near the lava maze. Once you track him down, he challenges you to a battle, and once you win, he gives you his piece of the crest. You then return to Domitius, and as a thank you, instead of giving you steel gauntlets, you are given the family's best shield, the Dragon Shield. Pretty cool, right? And honestly, not that far off from the quest we eventually got. But if that reward had stayed, a Dragon Shield handed out by a mid-tier quest, it would have changed everything. At the time this quest was being developed, there was only 2 pieces of dragon equipment in the entire game. The Dragon Sword, known today as the Dragon Longsword, and the Dragon Axe, known today as the Dragon Battle Axe. Both were locked behind somewhat challenging quests, so the Dragon Shield would have fit perfectly into that lineup. But the Gowers clearly had bigger plans. And by bigger, I mean put the Dragon Shield behind a jungle puzzle so confusing it makes you wonder if the game is broken. The shield wouldn't appear until late 2003 and could only be used after completing Legends Quest, a quest far more punishing than anything Lady Killjoy originally designed. Still, the real rewards, the gauntlets, ended up being hugely influential. All 3 are still used by players to this day. Smelting gold bars at the blast furnace while wearing the goldsmith gauntlets is the best smithing experience in the game. Cooking gauntlets are the only way I got to 99 cooking without burning half of my bank. And chaos gauntlets, I guess some people use them. They have some niche magic training uses, but compared to the other 2, they're not nearly as useful. What's even more important than these gauntlets, though, is that the character she created for the family crest didn't just fade into RuneScape's background. Years later, they return in a sequel mini-quest in old-school RuneScape called Family Pest, where players could finally unlock and have all 3 gauntlets at once. The father, Domitius, even played a major role in the Defender of Varrock quest, and we'll likely be seeing more of him in the future. Lady probably had no idea how important her little side quest would become. Anyway, while working on her quest, Lady Killjoy didn't slow down in-game. As you'd expect, most of her time was still spent training combat. Just a few months after the family crest launched, she became the first player to reach 99 strength, and shortly after, the first to hit 99 attack. She would also just barely pass Zhang Wei to become the player with the highest level hit points in the game. These milestones combined would push her to rank 1 on the fighting high scores. But you might be wondering, how? We know now that she started RuneScape a bit later than many other high-level players. So how did she possibly catch up? Well, she had spent the last few months almost exclusively killing guards for hours on end, every day. She had discovered something strange about how RuneScape's combat formula worked at the time. Despite her very high combat level, it was actually more efficient to kill lower level NPCs. Higher level NPCs took longer to kill, and overall gave you much slower XP. Being a high level player helped her rise to fame, but her reputation as a skilled player killer is really what helped her keep it. A few months prior to these accomplishments, RuneScape had undergone a pretty huge change. Player versus player combat was turned off everywhere, except for a newly released huge chunk of land that I've briefly discussed in this video called the Wilderness. Here, player versus player combat was turned on for everyone, and nowhere was safe. And this place was Lady Killjoy's new stomping grounds, and for everyone else, it was a scenic shortcut back to Lumbridge. Here, she would demolish other players, earning her countless rune items, scores of dragon equipment, and even dozens of party hats. Had she held on to all of it, she would surely be one of the richest players in the game right now. You'll see why she didn't in a moment. Now, seeing as how she had the highest combat level in the game and a near endless supply of all of the best gear, thanks to her friendship with Blue Rose, it was near impossible for other players to compete with her. If you came across her in the wilderness, your only option was to run, as trying to fight her would almost certainly lead to your death. By now, everywhere she went, players would follow her, spamming her name and asking questions. She was invited to in-game weddings, promoted to forum moderator for the Wanderers, and regularly topped lists of RuneScape's scariest players. And now, thanks to the family crest, she had even helped shape the game's future. Lady Killjoy had reached the top of the game in every aspect. But just as quickly as she rose, it all began to slip away. In the following months, she would begin to dislike PKing, soon announce her retirement from it. She would comment that she doesn't PK anymore because it started to get to her when people would beg her not to kill or hit them. This would slowly kill the fun of it for her. She would continue playing RuneScape for a while, but would quickly start to fall in ranks on the fighting high scores. In mid 2003, she would finally quit RuneScape to instead play a different game called Dark Age of Camelot, and later, when it was announced in 2004, World of Warcraft. However, this wasn't the last we would see of Lady Killjoy in RuneScape. Many years later, after the game had already transitioned to RuneScape 2, she would return. She would co-found a skilling clan called Keepers of Forgotten Honor, and trained the newly released construction skill for a while before disappearing once again. From then on, she would pop onto the game here and there over the next few years, but never stuck around. In 2008, she made a forum post that perfectly captured how out of place she now felt in the game that she once dominated. So I've been wandering around the last few days on RS. Just wow, how things have changed so much. I've been lost in some city for a day now. Anyway, what is max combat level now? And where the heck did PKing go? It was a surreal moment. Lady Killjoy, once the most feared player in RuneScape, now completely lost in a world that had moved on without her. A few months after that post, something strange happened. Lady Killjoy logged into RuneScape once again, but players soon discovered it wasn't her. Unfortunately, her account had been hacked, and the hacker would take all of the valuables she had earned while PKing. The last time anyone saw her account in game, and in July of 2014, Jagex released the usernames of former members who hadn't logged in for over 2 years, as well as the usernames of non-members who'd been inactive for more than 6 months. Lady Killjoy's name was among them, and just like that, it was gone, taken by a player who, if you check their stats, clearly isn't her. Although Lady Killjoy has long vanished from RuneScape, her legacy lives on in the character she created, every gauntlet worn, and every player who panic clicks the logout button in the wilderness. Check out the video on the right, all about why RuneScape's housing market collapsed. In 2001, houses existed in major cities like Varrock that players were going to be able to buy and live in until they all vanished without warning. Hey guys, I just found something cool that helps me earn a bit of extra cash and declutter my space. Watch this. So this app is Carrot, where you can buy and sell stuff in your area. Look, you just scan, and Carrot tells you how much you can sell it for, like instantly. 75. This one's definitely finding a new home. Wait, $275 already? That's kind of exciting. And the best part, you can post it right away. No typing, just tap, and you're done. Wow. If your place is full of random stuff like mine, download the Carrot app. Selling's crazy easy now. TD low rate Visa card can help find some balance. TD, ready for you.
Oh. Why a long face, Mushroom? That luck. Just need to use seed, damn it. Wow, that was a terrible run. Oh, I need way more mithril. Oh man, no, no, no. Oh well, what can you do? I always. gorgeous. I don't mind that at all.
This is supposed to be Jim Carrey for 5 minutes. You felt like you knew him for 4 years.
Who Was Jim Carrey a clone?
This is totally
Things are getting weird.
oh, so
Do I gotta use a needle on it? How do I do that again?
look at his eye color compared to the imposter. So everybody thinks this is a fake Jim Carrey. You know? Really? Shit. They're doing this?
I can't believe he committed to doing all that.
Yeah.
Someone else. My favorite funny face is the one I'm wearing right now.
Oh man, I took the shovel. Oh well.
What the fuck? What the fuck? Dude, there's no way, right? Like, what is this? I mean, this looks like bullshit, honestly.
Oh,
Like,
you need to do it on a
trying to make
loom.
Jim Carrey one of the worst psyops in the world. Jim Scary. Jim Carrey's full speech. Okay, so he couldn't say anything. I don't know, man. Like, everybody thinks that this guy is like a fake. He had it figured out. Like, what the fuck? What a difference 8 years makes. I mean, yeah, people get older. I mean, that's kind of what happens. I don't know what to think about this. What the fuck? The lizard people got him. I mean, he did talk a lot about. Because this is, the thing is, like, this is the way I imagine Jim Carrey to look. And, like, the cheeks are different. Like, I don't know, the face, that's what it could be. It doesn't look or behave like Jim Carrey. Like, because you look at his eyebrows, too, and that's usually where they put, I think, Botox in, I'm pretty sure. Like, look at this.
Did you notice Jim Carrey's blue eyes? Nobody realized that the person accepting the award at the 51st César Awards was actually Jim Carrey's body double. First, Jim Carrey's eyes have always been a deep brown, especially during the Mask and the Truman Show era. Those eyes carried a signature brown glow, lively and full of vitality. However, the person receiving the award had blue eyes, appearing almost unnaturally transparent under the bright stage lights. Second, anyone familiar with Jim Carrey knows that in recent years, he has gradually distanced himself from mainstream Hollywood social events and has publicly expressed his detachment from fame and celebrity culture. In contrast, the award recipient was very outgoing on stage, interacting frequently with the media and using exaggerated gestures, completely inconsistent with Jim Carrey's low-key personality. Finally,
Maybe he just didn't want to go to the award show, so he just is like, I'll pay you to go get an award for me.
Funny faces and exaggerated gestures, but these seem like intentional imitations of Jim Carrey remembered from memory, lacking natural humor. Both the gestures and facial
I know what he's talking about.
expressions
I do.
trace of mechanical precision, like a trained stand-in performing Jim Carrey. Do you think the person accepting the award at the César Awards was really Jim Carrey?
Should have kept that shovel.
There's no way this is real, right? Like, this is Jim Carrey the clone? Jesus, it's so loud. There's no way. It's weird. I mean, we deserve better psyops. Oh my fucking god. I don't even know what to say. It's called. I feel like he probably just got plastic surgery, right? I mean, like, there's no way this is real. I mean, that's crazy if this is real. You don't see it at all? Well, I don't know about that. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's not it. I mean, I have no idea. That's him? Like, his eyes. Stop cloning up the... Look. Oh. Where does it say? Like, this is how bad it's spelling. What is it here? Okay. It wasn't there and I got confused. Okay. Holy fuck. My brain doesn't organize words. No, I'm serious. Like, it's crazy. Bro, like, yeah, no, I'm serious. Like, I have no memory of the way letters are. Okay, this is it. This Jim Carrey shit has me bugging. Oh my god. Like, holy fuck, man. Like, I don't even know what to say. This is insane. Like, are you a clone too? I guess I am a clone. Like, this is, yeah, the blue eyes. I mean, I don't know about being blue eyes or anything like that. I got no idea. Dyslexia, Maxim? I just don't organize words. My brain does not organize words. Jim Carrey celebrating his 60-second photo with, I mean, like, that doesn't really look that, I mean, he looks kind of the same as he does there. I mean, I feel like, okay, so does he look, oh man, that's crazy. That's insane. The hairline, maybe, I just, think it could just be a surgery or something. I give it a little bit longer and see what happens. There's no chance. I mean, I don't think that looks that much different. I really don't. But there is something that like is very. I think it's his eyebrow. It's his brow ridge or something like that. Is what makes it look different. What about his teeth? I feel like the teeth look pretty much about the same. Sure. And made a rare appearance to honorary Caesar Award in Paris. Wow. And so his name is Walter Goggins. You think that there's a fake person? You can't convince me they didn't clone him here. I just, dude, there's no way they could. Dude, this is right. Yeah. What is it? Come on, Jimmy. Seriously, the time is up. People are hip to this kind of stuff. I'm here tonight to blow the lid off and to be the whistleblower. I'm sick and tired of secrets and lies. It's the secret symbol of the Illuminati. It's all locked in time. I gotta say that if there is ever a time for it to happen, it would. Be all locked. I'm sick of it. I want everybody to be in on the joke. You know what I mean? Everybody be in on the joke. Now, talk show hosts, people on the laugh tracks for ads have been hired by the government to throw you off the track, to distract you, to make you laugh, and stuff like that, make you happy and docile, so you don't know what's really going on. You know, they get out there in the woods in a circle, naked, and they decide these things. You know, and look at this is hilarious. Wow, and it's just. I mean, so this is. I don't exist. This is too. Wait. I don't exist. So they're all characters that I played, including Jim Carrey, including Joe Barish, including any of those things. They're all characters. Jim Carrey was a less intentional character, right? Because I thought I was just building something that people would like, but it was a character. I played the guy that was free from concern so that people who watched me would be free from concern. I don't exist. It's wonderful. I really took this is dude. How is this happening with everything and with everybody? Like I don't even know what to say. This is crazy. Like what the fuck is going on? Okay, so this is kind of he's taking estrogen. Okay, so the probability that I think Jim Carrey has been replaced with a clone. 2%. Sorry. I think it's 2%. Very, very low percentage. Okay. It's like zero. Yes. I really think it's probably just plastic surgery and him looking weird. And that's the way it is. It's not a crazy big deal. He got some filler in his face. Yeah. Usually, whenever people have that, they look weird for a couple of days, then it settles and they look more normal. There's nothing crazy at all about this. King shot, build and fight.
Let's try this look on. That's a 5.
RuneScape's biggest long-term threats. But at one point in time, it actually helped save the game and its history in more ways than one. For this story, we have to take it all the way back to RuneScape Classic, the original version of RuneScape. But maybe not the time period you were expecting. This story starts long after RuneScape 2 had launched, 2009 to be exact. RuneScape Classic, although closed to most of the public, was still online and playable. To try and cut costs and prevent rule breaking, the free-to-play servers were closed in 2005, and in early 2006, it was decided if your account hadn't logged into the servers in the last 6 months, you'd be locked out completely. Anyone who's played RuneScape for a long period of time has definitely taken a 6-month break before. Just imagine if this still existed today and it's like, oops, there goes 3,000 hours of my life. You'd think with such harsh restrictions in place, the game would die a quick death, but it still managed to keep around 200, sometimes 300 players online during peak hours. Not bad for a game that hadn't had a legitimate update since the launch of the Nintendo DS. However, the real action was on private servers. Tech-savvy players had figured out a way to emulate RuneScape Classic servers and make their own versions of the game with no restrictions on who could play. But those of you who have been gaming for a while know private servers for games, especially RuneScape, are a big no-no. Since Classic was still online, although hard to access, these private servers were taking away a decent chunk of Jagex's players, and as a result, but it actually makes a lot of sense why players were flocking to these servers, despite Jagex heavily looking down upon them and not always being the safest. Besides not being able to get into the official Classic servers, 2009 was a pretty bad year for RuneScape 2. Jagex imposed item and gold trading restrictions and killed PvP combat entirely by making the wilderness a safe zone. Why? To try and prevent real-world trading, the process of buying and selling RuneScape items and gold for real money. But this solution sucked because it didn't just punish rule-breaking players, it made everyone's experience with the game worse. So players went looking for nostalgia, found RuneScape Classic, saw that they couldn't get in, and sought out private servers. It didn't take long for Jagex to reach out to these server owners and begin shutting them down. But, of course, new ones would pop up to take their place. So, Jagex made a pretty smart move, and just decided to give the people what they wanted. In September of 2009, a news post was made saying that not only was Jagex going to reopen Classic servers to the public, they had some very ambitious plans. Just like I used to have some pretty ambitious plans to build a game like RuneScape. During my teen years, I spent months building this game, stumbling through an ancient programming language, and just trying to make something that didn't look like complete garbage. But I never had the technical know-how to finish it. It would have been a lot easier with today's sponsor, Southern New Hampshire University. SNHU has one of the largest accredited non-profit online degree offerings in the country, and I want to talk to you about their game development program. In this program, taught by faculty with real-world
Some really sensual music for
languages
an
like
ad.
C++, C#, and even
I'm just
Java,
picturing someone
which
like
is
making out with
perfect for those who
Java.
want to make RuneLite plugins. You'll also learn how to make realistic and dynamic gameplay experiences with AI, game physics, 2D and 3D graphics, and more. Plus, you'll even get taught how to make your own 3D models. Best of all, SNHU is super affordable and has some of the lowest online tuition rates in the nation. Go to snhu.edu/Colanello in the description to learn more. Now, before we discuss Jagex's wild plans for Classic, maybe I should discuss why Classic servers became so restricted in the first place. It was botting software. Classic's bot detection was pretty primitive, and by that, I mean probably didn't exist. In RuneScape 2, if you were to download a bot client and start up a script, it's likely you'd be randomly banned sometime within the next few days to weeks, and you'd probably score yourself a nice little virus on the family computer. Yeah, good luck explaining that one to mom again. Now, you wouldn't get banned because someone saw you, thought you were botting, and reported you, but
I should just
because
keep
they
the
had
cargo.
automated checks in place to make sure that you were not. mouse movements, clicks, key presses, and more are reported by Jagex's systems, even today, to try and find botters. Back in Classic, catching botters was much trickier. Today, bots have to pretend to be move the mouse naturally.
Let's just see. I've got eight or six.
Don't bot your thieving level so high it goes negative.
Adamant.
Yeah, that was something that actually happened in Classic. I'm joking. Back in Classic, botters didn't have to worry about a lot of stuff. Clicks and key presses weren't monitored, so you could get away with some pretty ridiculous exploits. Bots didn't emulate clicks. They manipulated network packets. Those are the things that get sent back and forth between your game client and Runescape server. For example, if you were to click somewhere,
oh, I can't yet.
It would send the network packet
8
off
bars.
to Jagex's servers to tell them that you did that and to move your character there. My favorite example
Faculty
of how much
bottle.
these packets could be abused is on these
What?
guards near the fight arena. Unlike normal guards, they don't have the pickpocket option, so you couldn't train thieving on them. Unless you used a bot client to manipulate your packets. You could trick the game into thinking you're thieving from normal guards and actually be able to pickpocket them. Craziest of all, someone who I'll introduce later trained their thieving to 99 doing this. Another good example is with this iron rock cluster in Varrock. Let's say you wanted to mine all 3 rocks. To reach this diagonal one, your character would need to walk to it, then mine it. Instead, if you had a bot to manipulate packets,
It's empty though. I don't need an empty one. I need one with something in it.
Rock and not the movement request, and your character would mine the rock diagonally without moving. Being able to do ridiculous stuff like that and not getting banned for it is just unthinkable in today's times. So, how did Classic players get away with such blatant rules?
It's interesting.
Well, RuneScape Classic experts believed that Classic didn't have any bot detection at all. Every major ban wave came from Jagex sort of tricking botters with small changes made to the code. 2006 was the last major ban wave for RuneScape Classic. Jagex figured out who was botting by adding an extra number to the deposit and withdraw packets. So, for example, every time you deposited or withdrew an item from your bank, the game client would send that packet to the server to let it know. Assuming you were playing on the official RuneScape client and not using a bot script, you would send the new correct packet. But players still using bot scripts didn't know that an extra number had been added to the end of the packet. So their scripts would send the old incorrect ones. All Jagex had to do was ban anyone who sent the wrong packet. This ban wave led to a staggering 5,000 accounts banned, which for Classic was humongous. It pretty much cut the active player count of the game in half. Every other ban wave in RuneScape Classic's history had this same detection method. A slight change that would trick botters. So it makes sense that Jagex didn't want Classic to be open to the public all the time. They couldn't realistically monitor it to make sure nobody was cheating. So, going back to the 2009 news post, how did Jagex expect not to run into this exact same issue when Classic did reopen to the public? Well, by avoiding it completely. Jagex planned to offer players the ability to rent and administer their own Classic servers from Jagex. Server owners could turn cheats on and off as they pleased, whitelist who could join, and even give their friends moderator ranks. The official servers would stay online, but they would still be locked to just those who had access from before. New players would only be allowed to access the player-owned servers. After all this hype and cool feature teasing, Jagex canceled everything and instead just reopened Classic to the public for 2 weeks. But to be fair to Jagex, it's a little bit better than it sounds. Paying members who logged in during those 2 weeks could continue to play Classic after the 2 weeks were over. Those who didn't would have to wait until it reopened again. Over the next few years, Jagex planned to reopen Classic to the public for a few weeks, close it again for about 6 months, and repeat. I'm assuming they decided on this strategy because it wouldn't cost nearly as much as retrofitting Classic to allow for custom servers. Although it was a bit of a letdown, I'm pretty thankful for these reopenings because had it not been for the ones in 2007,
Where the fuck's this guy?
I probably would have never got the chance to play. Now, you're probably still wondering, what about bots? Did Jagex add any sort of bot protection this time around? Yes, but time, RuneScape 2 was going under a slight redesign under the hood. Duncan was working on the ability to change your character's display name. Yeah, no more username you made in 4th grade. Now you can make something cool. Because players in Classic could send messages to players on RuneScape 2, Classic would need some changes in order to support this new display name system. While adding this change, they also borrowed some techniques from RuneScape 2 to make decompiling RuneScape Classic's client harder. This would mean getting your hands on the code and reverse engineering it would become much trickier. They also added the ability to withdraw or deposit all of an item in your bank or inventory, or put in your own custom number. For example, you could withdraw something like 13 trout. Previously, you could withdraw or deposit small amounts, like 1 at a time, 5 at a time, 250, and so on. You had no other choice but to sit there and spam click the withdraw or deposit amount until you did the amount you actually wanted. All of these changes broke most of the now very old bot clients that players were using. You'd think at this point players would just give up on botting. It's 2009 and they're botting a game made for Windows 2000. But you'd be surprised. Players who botted in RuneScape Classic didn't do so for the reasons that people do today. Today, when someone uses
So did I get the experience or
one of two reasons. They want to trade gold or their accounts for real money, or to level up someone else's account quickly without doing any of the work. Overall, bots hurt the game's economy and player experience. They cause a lot of resources to drop to dirt cheap levels and ruin money making.
Ooh, 13.
Real low to mid level players.
Oh, that's the 3 at First Oceans. Okay, that's pretty good.
Gained by farming gold in a game with maybe a few hundred active players. Well, nothing. There was no major online marketplace to buy and sell accounts for gold on RuneScape Classic. I'm sure some private back alley sales happened, but
Back alley RuneScape sales. Rolling dice for some GP.
As weird as that sounds, these were players who still enjoyed Classic so much to keep playing all these years after it was discontinued. They knew the alternatives weren't the same or would get shut down, and probably didn't have the time or patience anymore to grind out the boring stuff. Virtually everyone around them was already botting. Jagex didn't seem to enforce the rules, so everyone figured, why not? Although bots were the reason Classic became so restricted in the first place, we're now keeping it alive. Classic, for a lot of people, had changed from a grindy, difficult game to an idle game that they would sometimes.
Oh man, it's beautiful. I don't know. Really gave me some endorphins there.
But it is a pretty interesting concept. But now it's 2009. Every piece of botting software is now broken, and the game is open to the public for 2 weeks. It saw a huge influx of new, legitimate players, but it wouldn't last long. For anyone that's never played Classic, I'm just kidding, but this game really tested your patience. Anything you wanted to do in RuneScape 2 was infinitely easier than in Classic. You had to enter a CAPTCHA every 10 minutes or so, couldn't eat during combat, couldn't escape from combat until 3 rounds in, so you're probably already dead by then. You can fail to chop a tree, light a fire, cast a spell, and you can't even run. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised you can't starve. Classic was a really hard game, and us RuneScape 2 babies weren't ready for that. As sad as it sounds, the game would never return to its.
I want to go kill those tiger sharks.
At the end of the first opening, player numbers seemed to stay strong, but declined back to pre-opening numbers just a few months later. The only reason it even got back to those pre-opening numbers wasn't because a set of legitimate players decided to stick around. It was instead because the bots were back. Sometime in early 2009, a player named RLN began work on a new bot for Classic, with all the nice advances in software technology that earlier bots didn't have. RLN's bot was called Awesome Piece of Software, or APOS for short, and it instantly took off in the RuneScape Classic community. By the time Classic's first opening was over, pretty much all the old players were back online running APOS. In the background, Jagex continued to temporarily reopen Classic, not every few months like they said they would, but instead only about once a year. Although new players came and went like before, APOS users were
I don't think that's worth it.
more community. Players changed their names to things like APOS bot, community events were held where they spammed the bot's name, and there were even a few drop parties. It was to the point where Classic players who played legitimately would sign up for the APOS forums just so they had other people to talk to about the game and trades. As weird as it sounds,
That
APOS
Stingray or
was the
Manta Ray
main
that was
reason
in there?
RuneScape Classic was still alive,
Eagle Ray.
even though its community
And it was at the
mostly
Boyd Nate.
mods, they
Aw,
were still paying
man.
members. Without them, I think Jagex probably pulled the plug on
Is that
Classic
tail?
very soon after it reopened. For those that bought it, it was an awesome time to play RuneScape Classic, but it wouldn't last forever. To celebrate RuneScape's 15th anniversary, Classic opened publicly again in January 2016
I
to
realized they had collisions.
members. Originally, this opening was going to be the longest one and would last until March, but for some reason, Jagex decided to leave the game servers open permanently, at least for the foreseeable future. By this time, RLN had moved on from APOS due to time constraints, but the project was passed on to another developer named Stormy in 2012. They're the person who got to 99 thieving on those cards from earlier, and also actually the one who provided me most of the information in this video. So, big thank you to them. Stormy and other Classic veterans felt like Classic could be on its way out soon. Jagex had tried time and time again to revive the game with little success, and quite a lot of major game-breaking bugs had begun popping up. It was really only a matter of time before Jagex decided to pull the plug. So Stormy decided to write a script that would more or less
I could give him my Dragon Scimitar.
Doing this allowed Stormy and others who used the script to gather tons of accurate history about the game that hadn't been reported. Things like item drop rates, dialogue, skilling XP rates, and other small but important details that would certainly be lost to time. In total, Stormy managed to make over 6,000 edits to the RuneScape Classic Wiki before the game closed, and their character is instantly recognizable.
Slow the fuck down. Holy shit.
It's kind of crazy to think that without this one bot, RuneScape Classic would have likely closed its doors so much sooner, and most of its fine details, the quirks that really make it what it is, would be completely lost. So, for the first time in history ever, I'd like to say thank you, botters. But stop messing up old school. I'm down bad on Zolma scales. But I guess it could be worse. Jagex could have just removed them from the game, like they did back in the day with RuneScape's rarest item. I'm not even kidding. Check that video out on the right-hand side of the screen.
Oh, pizza looks good. Damn it.
Swift Switch was RuneScape's best client ever, and Jagex did just about everything in their power to destroy it back in 2006, but it just wouldn't die. Until it did. But in the end, it wasn't even Jagex's fault. Today, we find out why. Speaking of groundbreaking software built for gamers, let's talk about today's sponsor, Opera GX, the world's first browser built for gamers. Opera GX just added something called GX Profiles.
Oh, I was like, if that takes up space, this would go to...
Doing online. For example,
oh, damn, it's coming over me on the side.
Weekend, you can create a profile with the potato configuration to just load the bare bones stuff. After doing so, it'll be conveniently available in your Windows taskbar. Now, you might think, this sounds cool, but what about all my Chrome plugins? I can't just switch browsers and lose my daily Garfield Comics plugin. Fear not, because Chrome extensions are compatible with Opera GX, and you can even use the quick import tool to import all your settings, bookmarks, and history from your previous browser. Trust me, you will not miss your old browser when you see how nice Opera GX looks. Not only does it have an awesome customizable design where you can choose from a variety of themes, you can add your own custom wallpapers or pick from Opera GX's animated ones. I should also
That's what I got with an emerald ring.
GX anywhere
So other
with the GX
sharks are giving me better shit.
So if this all sounds good to you, you should help the channel out and download Opera GX for free using my link in the description below. So, back in 2004, RuneScape 2 had just been released. It was a massive improvement graphically over the original game, but that wasn't too hard to do. Had tons of new content, and as a result, quickly started gaining popularity. It was great, but there was a slight problem. RuneScape 2's worlds cap at around 2,000 players, and many activities were world-specific. Most notably, buying and selling of just about every item in the game was done in Valinor Park on World 2. If you wanted to trade your items for gold, you needed to be able to get onto this world. But due to RuneScape's popularity increasing, World 2 was full almost every day, no matter the time. You may just think, oh, well, that's not too bad. I hop to full worlds all the time. It just takes a few tries. Wrong. It wasn't so easy back then. There was no world selector on the login screen or in-game world switcher. The Runescape website had a web page that listed every game world after you clicked play. If you wanted to play on a certain world, you just clicked on the one you wanted, and it would load the Runescape client for that world. However, if the world was full, which it often was, you couldn't click on the link. So the only way to get into the world would be by refreshing the world page until the one you wanted didn't say full. You click on the world link, and by the time the client loaded, it was probably full again. So now that you have the client open, you would then have to spam the login button until it let you in. I joke that this is riveting gameplay, but it's honestly more exciting than some of RuneScape's not so good skills. This was a long process that, if you were unlucky, could take anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes, which was and still is a long time, especially if your mom said you could only use the computer for an hour that day. And no matter what, you know she wasn't going to take, but I couldn't log in, as an excuse. Rather than deal with this mess, players started looking for loopholes, and a pretty easy one was found. Let's say you spam refresh the world page and you could finally click on World 2. If you bookmarked the link, next time you wanted to log into World 2, you just loaded.
Okay, those sharks sucked. Like, what did they give me? Some adamant legs? Like, Addy Crossbow might have been nice at the start of my journey, but I swear those other sharks that I started at like level 40 were dropping way better shit.
Again, if the world actually was full, you'd still have to spam the login button, but you could still skip the whole world list refreshing thing. Now, switching programs had been around since RuneScape 1, now known as RuneScape Classic. But with the transition from RuneScape Classic to RuneScape 2, most, if not all of them, became outdated and broken. This is when a RuneScape player named Strider3282 decided to take matters into his own hands. Strider researched what it would take to create his own switcher and thought he could do it. So he installed a copy of Visual Basic 6 and got to work. I did the same thing with the Visual Basic 6 MMO creator in middle school. That clearly didn't work out because I do YouTube for a job and not run a massive MMO company. But luckily, Strider got a bit further than me. At the time, Strider was co-leader of a clan called Imperial Hellkites. Strider decided to brand his world switcher as his clan's client that anyone could download. And when it was ready, it was pretty advanced for the time. Not only did it have a world switcher, it could take screenshots, open maps, clue puzzle helpers, and even had a built-in IRC chat client, which, if you don't know what that is, think of it as if RuneLite had a Discord chat client built into it. Eventually, the Hellkites disbanded, so Strider temporarily changed the client's name to Strider's RuneScape client, before he landed on the now very nostalgic name of Swift Switch. Now, Strider needed somewhere to host the client, and rather than host it on his own, he wanted to strike a deal with then popular RuneScape fan site Zybez. After some discussion, Zybez was made the home for all things Swift Switch. A download link would be placed on the sidebar of the website, it would get its own forum section, and many of Swift Switch's tools, like its item market price lookup, would use Zybez's APIs. When Swift Switch launched, it was pretty amazing how far ahead of the competition it was. It had made a lot of improvements over the initial Imperial Hellkites. It had timers for things like
How far is Port Roberts from here?
A built-in custom timer, which probably made Mom happy, advanced skill calculators for every skill, links to Zybez's guides, and even a built-in MP3 player with access to Zybez radio. This thing was pretty awesome for the time. Best of all, everything about Swift Switch was in line with Jagex's rules. Everything it had technically didn't give you any sort of
So I could teleport there,
players. Swift Switch was
grab it, and then go south.
Clients we have today. Whereas clients like RuneLite have things like tagging objects and NPCs, in-game clue helpers, animation swappers, and so much more. Swift Switch had none of that. Its tools actually interacted with or changed the game itself, but it didn't need to. The tools that Swift Switch had was more than enough for most players. So, as you can imagine, Swift Switch quickly caught on. Competitors popped up, but most weren't nearly as good, or those that were broke Jagex's rules. Everything seemed to be going great Strider even got confirmation from Jagex that what he had created wasn't against the game rules, although it did take a few tries. That was until March 14th, 2005, when Andrew Gower, RuneScape's founder, posted a topic without warning to the RuneScape community/Cybeth forums titled "Users of Swift Switch will be banned." But a bit of background first. When RuneScape was still a browser game, which, wow, that's weird to say, it would display advertisements just about everywhere it could. On the home page, on the world selection page, and if you didn't pay for membership, there'd be ads displayed above the game window. If Jagex could have figured it out, they probably would have had free-to-play players wearing ads. Jokes aside, Swift Switch didn't display any of Jagex's ads, so free-to-play users who played on Swift Switch wouldn't ever see an advertisement. Once Andrew discovered this, he made the previously mentioned post, and wow, he just went off. Here's an excerpt.
Is this even closer than Edgeville?
Adverts are all that pay to keep the free game running. What a great way to thank us for running the free game for you by deliberately cutting all the adverts off. Now, that last part just makes me laugh. But Andrew continued on to say that from this point on, Swift Switch was now banned, and any website caught supporting it would also be
It's
classified as
crazy.
a cheating site. As you'll probably see in some videos I want to make soon, Andrew Gower was not a fan of cheating, or what he perceived to be cheating. So if you don't want to miss those, I'd appreciate you pressing subscribe below if you haven't already.
No, this is crazy. This is where I gotta be doing my crafting from. Holy moly.
It was easily possible.
Just keep switching worlds, buying 10-10, bam bam, boom boom. Holy moly, this is game changing. I might... Oh, I'll be back here by the end of the night.
Fast forwarding to 2007, Swift Switch had grown in user base by a pretty
I thought hemp was nice.
amount, and its development team had grown from being just Strider to a group of people.
Wow.
Although the client was still
We're
being
getting
hosted
there.
by Zybez, it had gotten big enough to warrant its own website. It seemed like just about everybody was using Swift Switch, or had at least heard of it.
That is
So it
free
was a
quest
pretty
now.
big surprise when on January 2nd, 2007, Jagex flat out banned every third-party client, including Swift Switch. Their main reasoning was that a large amount of players had downloaded programs pretending to be a safe client for RuneScape, but it was instead malware that stole their accounts.
Finish this guy and do Shield of Around.
Such as, in their words,
And
extremely
these
unsafe
two.
chat channels where large amounts of scamming go on and users encourage each other to try to break the rules. Remember earlier how I mentioned the Imperial Hellkite's client had a built-in IRC client? Well,
167, 12 more
and that's what
quests.
Jagex had a problem with. I guess in some of the IRC channels, there had been discussions of rule-breaking type activities, but it was likely overblown by Jagex. However, these channels used the same silver and gold crowns that player moderators and Jagex moderators have in-game, so many players were using the IRC chat with some sort of official chat ran by Jagex. Now, regardless of all these issues, let's do something. SwiftKit was ready, it instantly exploded in popularity. And based on their internal data, SwiftKit was being used by about 40% of the game's players at the time. Things went great for a few years.
Teleport
SwiftKit
to
saw
boat.
frequent updates and new feature
That was
additions. The developers
teleport
even
my
started
boat.
creating other
Yeah.
non-RuneScape programs. They founded a group called Blue Light Dev and made a website that would house SwiftKit and the team's future projects. They went on to launch programs to take screenshots.
I'm gonna give you a second chance on giving me better drops.
SwiftKit Mobile. You couldn't play RuneScape using the mobile app, but they had a ton of great calculators and guides. SwiftKit was doing great. There was tons of great software coming from Blue Light, and the future looked bright. Until the early hours of May 30th, 2012. A hacker attempted to impersonate the owner of SwiftKit's domain. They contacted the domain's registrar, GoDaddy, and their plan actually worked. They successfully stole the domain name from SwiftKit. After doing so, they redirected the SwiftKit website to their server. So when visiting SwiftKit's website, you'd see this. They also installed a Java applet on the page that would open when you visited the site. If you pressed accept on the applet certificate, it would install a rootkit on your machine that would steal your RuneScape account details. Now, you may think, no big deal. Only superfans of the client visited the website anyway, right? Well, the website's homepage would open in SwiftKit every time you opened it, which meant people not paying attention might just accept the applet thinking it was part of a new update. Luckily, SwiftKit's team acted fast and got the domain back in around 3 or 4 hours. I have to give some real credit to how it was handled as well. Zpoon, one of SwiftKit's main developers, posted a massive comment to the Reddit thread that was posted about the hack, not only informing users of what happened, but giving frequent updates on the situation, and even writing a step-by-step guide on how to remove the malware should you have accepted the applet. The damage that had been done in that time was small, and there weren't many reports of accounts being hacked. It luckily seemed to do very little to shake SwiftKit's control as the #1 third-party client. But fast forward 2 years later, and the project was dead. If you visit Blue Light Dev's website today, the last update to any of their projects was from 2014, and SwiftKit's page no longer exists. So, what happened? Well, I reached out to Zpoon, the developer I mentioned just a minute ago, and tried to find out what happened. He told me that everyone on the team sort of
My man,
bored with RuneScape.
we're on the same page. 69, base 69, buddy.
So SwiftKit just went into maintenance mode. The only updates that were made were when things broke. For a while, things picked up when SwiftKit added some basic old-school RuneScape support, but it was quickly made obsolete by clients like OSRS. Zpoon says even he doesn't know what's going on these days, as he moved away from the project as well. Well, it turns out not much. Strider took down the SwiftKit website a few months ago, and you already know what happened with Blue Light. No interest
Emerald Ring? Like, seriously?
And SwiftKit's code not available to the public, the project sort of just withered away before it disappeared. But one thing's for sure, it had an absolutely unforgettable ride. If watching this video has made you nostalgic, check out the video on the right where I deep dive into RuneScape's previously lost website. It was the biggest discovery of RuneScape data ever, and I pinky promise you'll feel even more nostalgic after watching it. Also, make sure to check out Offer GX in the description below.
House call pro. You know that you can track your vehicle. House call pro. Your customers can actually track you as well. Did you know that? Once you hit I'm on my way, tell the customer where you are, how long before you get there, etc., etc. I'll never switch. Someone came to me and said, go here, go there, but they can never give me a reason why. My best option. I've been using them since 2018, and I'm a lifer.
The Christmas cracker was once RuneScape's most loved item, until it became the centerpiece of the game's underground gambling scene. It triggered one of the largest botting booms in old-school RuneScape history, sent prices soaring more than 60-fold, and eventually forced Jagex to nerf the item beyond recognition. This is the story of how RuneScape's most iconic item lost its magic, and the rule breakers who made it happen. To tell this story, we have to go back to December 24th, 2001. To celebrate Christmas, Jagex decided to drop a brand new item all over Falador Park called Christmas crackers. Players could pick them up, use them on another player, and both players would receive a reward. One player would get a random item that ranged from a piece of coal all the way up to something valuable, like a rune full helm, while the other player would receive another new item, a party hat of a random color. Players didn't know it yet, but both Christmas crackers and the party hats within them would go on to become some of the rarest and most valuable items in RuneScape history, as after December 24th, Jagex would never spawn more Christmas crackers in RuneScape ever again. These kinds of items are known as holiday items, or more broadly, rares. They're special rewards released only during limited time seasonal events, like Christmas, Halloween, or Easter, and once those events ended, they were never obtainable again. Some, like party hats and Halloween masks, are tradable and quickly turned into a status symbol of wealth. Others, like the Easter ring or yo-yo, are untradeable and serve more as fun souvenirs. Tradable rares were, and still are, the ultimate chase item for many of the game's players. So much so that in RuneScape 3, they've become unaffordable for the vast majority. Old school RuneScape, however, is a much different story. Soon after that version of the game was released, they were affordable. Perhaps too affordable. That low price would open the door to one of the largest botting and gambling explosions the game had ever seen. But first, let's talk about today's sponsor, Huel. To be honest, eating healthy isn't easy when the quick options are usually junk. If I'm too tired to cook, I end up ordering something I probably shouldn't. Huel Black Edition has been my fix for that. It's fast, healthy, and actually keeps me full. It's packed with nutrients, including vitamin C to support your immune system, and vitamin B12 to help reduce tiredness and fatigue, plus the right balance of protein, carbs, essential fats, and fiber to keep you going. Each shake has 40 grams of plant-based protein, over 6 grams of fiber, and 27 essential vitamins and minerals. And my favorite part, Black Edition powder starts at just $2.65 a meal. It takes just 30 seconds to prepare. They have a load of flavors to pick from, but my favorite has to be cookies and cream. When you're in a rush, Huel also comes in a ready-to-drink version with the same great nutrition and taste. If you're ready to give it a try, click the link in the description and use code COLONELLO15 to get 15% off your order. Old School RuneScape was released in February of 2013, and at the time was an exact copy of RuneScape as it was on August 10th, 2007. However, everyone started with a fresh account. This meant that all of the old rares, like Christmas crackers, technically existed in the game's code, but nobody actually had them. There was no way to obtain them. For a while, Jagex wasn't sure if they would ever release these items into old school RuneScape, as they struggled to find a way to implement them into the game that would make everyone happy. After a lot of discussion and a few polls, they settled on a few different methods to bring rares back. First, they turned their re-release into a big spectacle. Over the summer and fall of 2013, a new rare item, or a set of rare items, would be released each week. On every world, only one would spawn at a time, randomly chosen from 100 possible locations. As soon as someone found the rare and picked it up, a new one would spawn in a different spot. It was a really cool event, and it unironically saved the game from closing. I actually have a whole video about that, which you'd probably enjoy. During and after this event, rares were, well, rare, and as a result, extremely valuable. But Jagex didn't want these items to eventually become unobtainable like they are in RuneScape 3. So they decided to re-release them each year during their respective holiday events. The focus of this story is the Christmas cracker, which would return every year as a reward for completing that year's Christmas event. Every player who finished it would receive 2 Christmas crackers, along with 2 of every party hat, 2 Santa hats, and a handful of other untradable rares. To really drive home the idea that these items weren't meant to be the get-rich schemes they were back in 2001, Jagex also hosted events where moderators would spawn thousands of them on the ground for anyone to pick up, a tradition that actually still continues to this day. As a result, Christmas crackers became more common over the years, but for one big reason, they still remained far more valuable than other tradable rares. Much like opening a pack of Pokemon cards, once you crack a cracker open, there's no way to put it back together. And since they were only available for a few weeks each year, their price followed a predictable pattern. Right before that year's Christmas event, their value would crash, as players anticipated a flood of new crackers entering the game. After the event ended, prices would gradually climb again, until next Christmas when the cycle would repeat. But even during those crashes, crackers could still be sold for anywhere between 15,000 and 30,000 GP, making them one of the most consistently valuable holiday rewards in the game. Players would pick up on this, and many took part in the Christmas event every year simply for the crackers. They're somewhat valuable items that require almost no effort to obtain and felt like free money. Some players started treating them like investments, timing the market to buy low and sell high. But for the average player, it was more like, hey, I can get a solid chunk of GP just for playing the event. Unfortunately, bot farm owners would soon have the same realization and would begin creating scripts for the Christmas event every year. The event each year is incredibly easy to bot, as it never has any prerequisites. So you could sign up for a new account, complete Tutorial Island, and do the event all in under an hour. Every year you would see tens of thousands of bots completing the event just for its rewards. However, bot farm owners ran into a slight problem. All of these bots were fresh off Tutorial Island, and a fresh account comes with a few restrictions. The restrictions have changed through the years, but at the time, new accounts couldn't trade items without having at least 18 hours of playtime or 7 quest points. On top of this, dropped items were only visible to the player who dropped them, item stacks and PvP were reduced to 1, and many commonly botted items couldn't be sold on the Grand Exchange. In short, the bots could farm the rewards, but they couldn't actually trade them over to the bot farm's owner. This meant they, in turn, couldn't sell those rewards for GP and sell that GP for real money until they found a loophole. They discovered that they could use the general store to transfer items over. The bot accounts would go to a general store and sell the crackers to it. From there, the bot farm owner could then buy the crackers from the store, which the store now sold for just 1 GP each. The only downside was that the bot farm owner couldn't buy the item in noted form, so they would need to constantly run back and forth to the bank to make room in their inventory to buy more. But of course, they would automate the buying and banking process as well. Botters would make billions of GP every year this way, but they had no idea that in 2022, Jagex was about to make an update that would soon make this method, and this is not an exaggeration, 60 times more profitable. But a bit of context is needed first. In the late 2000s, long before old school RuneScape was created, RuneScape had a growing problem with player-run games of chance, or as most players and even Jagex themselves called it, gambling. Crowds would gather in busy areas like the Grand Exchange to take part in all kinds of player-made betting games. The most common one was called dicing, and it worked like this. Let's say you had 100,000 coins you wanted to bet. Walk up to a trusted player known as a dicing host, trade them your 100k, and they use an item called a dice bag to roll a number between 1 and 100. The number the host rolled would then be automatically posted in the game's chat. Most hosts followed the same rules. If the number was above 55, you won double your money. If it was below 55, they kept your bet. It was simple, exciting, and completely unregulated. The system relied entirely on trust, and with large amounts of gold,
I'll be back to finish these 3 after supper.
before long, entire clans were built around